Hello again. So let's dive into some nerdy stuff in here. I've recently finished reading Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to by David Sinclair. Yeah, really. We don't have to, do we? David Sinclair has revolutionized the way people view aging. Lifespan was a New York Times bestseller. It was published, I believe, in 2019. And he describes the wonderful future that is still yet to come with all the advances in medicine that will most likely take place in the near future. Dr. Sinclair is a big proponent of addressing aging as a disease rather than a naturally occurring process. As we all know, aging is associated with increasing risk for developing multiple chronic diseases. And his theory is that if we fix aging, those diseases wouldn't even come into play. Makes sense, right? So, as some people on the internet seem to claim that I am 108 years old, or I was born in 1912, which actually, I guess it makes me 112. Anyway, I clearly have a vast interest in preserving all this to the point of eternity. So, let's see if Dr. Sinclair offers a key to an everlasting life. So he claims that not only that we can stop aging, we can also reverse it. At least he was able to do that in mice through epigenetic reprogramming. Super cool stuff. So now, I'm very skeptical when it comes to experiments with mice and how they translate onto humans. I kind of grew up around that environment. My mother was running a lab at some point, developing a drug that would alleviate the effects of being exposed to radioactivity after the Chernobyl event. And of course, they would have to conduct all the tests on mice, but very few of those drugs would parallel into being just as effective on humans. So I just kind of have to take it with a pinch of salt. Nevertheless, Lifespan is fantastic. It's a great book. It's a little rambling, but it's easy to read overall. Those who aren't familiar with biology and genetics may stumble on medical jargon here and there and find it a little difficult to follow at times, but there's a glossary at the very end, which is really useful. But I think my biggest critique is actually that the book lacks proper structure and actual practical guidelines that are easily laid out. But I feel like overall it contains so much useful information and it's inspiring in so many ways that its flaws can, honestly, they can be forgiven. They don't matter that much. And it was also one of those books that I felt like I needed to take notes of while reading. So here we go. Takeaways, breakdowns, explanations. And by the way, if I do say something that is scientifically incorrect, please feel free to point that out and publicly humiliate me. So, in this book, Dr. Sinclair talks about his history of studying sirtuins. They're proteins that repair DNA damage, turning genes off and on when needed. What they do is they play a key role during cell response to a variety of stresses, such as oxidative stress, and are crucial for cell metabolism. They mute inflammation, prevent cell death, and boost mitochondria. Therefore, sirtuins can maintain the youthful epigenome even with DNA damage occurring by repairing those DNA breaks. But as we age, unfortunately, these DNA repair mechanisms go down, causing a whole lot of issues. Dr. Sinclair specifically focuses on CR2 gene, stating that extra copies of the CR2 gene could stabilize the DNA and extend lifespan. And logically, he searches for activators of sirtuins, and there are a few of those. The whole chapter is dedicated to so-called sirtuin activating compounds, also known as stacks. These are some things that could be used to tweak pathways aside from diet and exercise. By and large, those stacks are drugs and supplements that mimic caloric restriction. So they're also known as caloric restriction mimetic compounds. They include rapamycin, metformin, resveratrol, and NAD boosters. In the next chapter, he goes on to cover one of the most fascinating things, the so-called Yamanaka factors. They're genes that could produce adult cells to become pluripotent stem cells, meaning that they can become any cell in the body. and that's what Dr. Shinya Yamanaka won the Nobel Prize for in 2012. He discovered that mature cell can be converted to a stem cell. And then Dr. Sinclair describes a popular study when a group of scientists was able to reverse the aging process in mice that were treated by selective Yamanaka factors. Supposedly a very safe process in mice, but still very, very, very promising. Later on, Dr. Sinclair goes on to cover senescent cells, the so-called zombie cells that should be dead, but somehow they refuse to die. They don't divide, but they release teeny little proteins called cytokines that cause inflammation and attract immune cells that attack the tissue. So, nothing good here, obviously, but the solution for that may be in so-called senolytics, types of drugs that kill senescent cells, potentially alleviating many conditions like diabetes, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, Alzheimer's disease, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, different eye diseases, and many, many more. So lots and lots and lots of food for thought, amazing information. I think I pretty much covered it all. Those are just the basics. So Dr. Sinclair says that there are things that you can do or things that could potentially be implemented in the future to tackle aging. So some of those things are cellular reprogramming using Yamanaka factors, vaccines against senescent cells, and ways to tweak pathway include CR mimetics, AMPK activators, TOR inhibitors, stacks or NAD boosters, and he also writes about the benefits of good old intermittent fasting and high intensity interval training. So, now I don't know how I feel about taking certain medications even if they are claimed to be safe without having conditions that they were made to treat just for the sake of getting extra perks. But that being said, I did get very interested in metformin, I must admit. It's very well studied, but I was not even aware of its existence because I'm not diabetic. But I've read tons and tons of research, and I decided it's worth giving it a go. That's just me. I'm that damn curious. It doesn't affect your blood sugar directly. It changes your microbiome, it activates AMPK, it lowers your energy, and it improves insulin signaling by inhibiting mTOR so that your blood sugar gets sucked out of the bloodstream and gets utilized. It also raises NAD levels, and that will activate sirtuins. Quick disclaimer, obviously, I'm not a medical doctor. In case you don't know, apparently there are some people out there who think that I am for some reason. Again, I'm not. My parents are, so don't take my advice at face value. And then again, I'm not advising you to take metformin. Always seek professional opinion. You can also look for alternative ways to improve insulin sensitivity. Like alcohol actually lowers your blood sugar. Maybe that's why so many people in France live a long and healthy life, with their diets being rich in fats and them having a glass of wine at lunch and dinner. And I'm kidding. I'm not advocating for drinking wine. But then again, resveratrol. And again, this is my uneducated supposition, but there might be a direct correlation between not having huge spikes in your blood sugar level throughout your life and prolonging your lifespan and health span. But it's like the same as maybe there is a correlation between traditional diets of people who live in so-called blue zones, many of whom become centenarians, but we are genetically different and we are pre-programmed to react differently to different types of food. It could as well be that those who typically eat a lot of, let's say, rice or sweet potatoes, like people in Okinawa, don't get a big spike in their sugar levels after they eat those foods just because they're genetically built that way, whereas someone else from a different culture with a different genetic makeup might get a completely different reaction, and that's why there is no universal diet for everyone. I am sidetracking. I don't even know if me laying it out like this made it more difficult to comprehend. Hopefully it did not. Hopefully it was helpful. I mean, at the end of the day, it all starts with proper diet, proper nutrition and exercise, just your basic lifestyle. Without the basics, nothing's really going to help. The punchline is that this book is great in the way that it opens up your eyes to so many different things that you can take into consideration, at least if your goal is tackling aging and prolonging your health span. It also does a great job in outlining the future and making you really inspired. And yeah, there are so many things to look forward to. You know, the future is bright and the possibilities are endless. It's like such a great time for a lot of anti-aging researchers. I would be very interested in seeing how someone would incorporate AI and machine learning into different wearable devices that keep track on different metrics, because that would be so great and will save so much time and so much money if people could just have all this data ahead of time, ahead of their visit to their doctors, so we could start preventing diseases rather than just wait for something to happen and then try to cure it. And then again, when it comes to like those Yamanaka factors and reversing the clock, that would probably come into play firstly in other animals other than mice rather than humans. But it would be so cool if we could test this technology in like de-aging or reversing the age of our pets. Like, for example, if you could prolong the life of your favorite dog, making it forever young, would you want to do that? I know, it's like God's complex. I'm getting wacky at this point. If you're still watching this and you somehow made it through all my ramble, thank you. I appreciate you. You can grab a copy of David Sinclair's Lifespan. I left the link in the description to this video below. And yeah, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for watching. All right. Ciao, cacao.